And when the nurse came into the room, I said, who was that doctor that was just here? And she says, there's not been anybody here. I said, you don't understand. There was a young man. I described him to her perfectly. And she said, well, my desk is outside your door. No one has been in your room. And it's like, all right, who was that then? You know, where did he come from? But I always felt that God gave me his presence to help me, because it's scary being really sick and trying to recuperate in a foreign country and stuff like that. And that did the trick. That gave me the confidence that I was going to be okay.
And you got back home and they told you should have been dead within 5 hours. And it was...
Yeah. And when I got back, when I came to the United States, I had extreme peritonitis, double pneumonia, collapsed lungs, and no liver function. And I was put on the critical list at St. Luke's Hospital in Fort Thomas. And I was on critical for 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. I was really sick, but I didn't...
And you thought you were going to die, though, didn't you?
Yeah, and I'm ashamed of this, but I wanted to die because I just wanted to go to heaven. I just wanted to be with Jesus. And I didn't have anything else in my mind except I wanted to go back to that. And if you knew him, you would understand, you know, why that's what I wanted to go back to. So I wasn't cooperating in my healing. Mm-hmm. I couldn't eat. I couldn't take anything. I was getting weaker and weaker and sicker and sicker. And I got to tell you the story. A night nurse by the name of Lisa came in one night, and she was about the only person in the hospital who had been listening to me talk about Jesus and his love and all this stuff. And this sweet little Lisa, real recent graduate of a AA program in nursing, got an associate's degree. She said, I'm going to make you a milkshake. I'm going to go down to oncology and make you a milkshake and get you well. And I said, I haven't eaten anything in weeks, you know, like, forget it, I'm not eating a milkshake. The idea makes me sick. And she said, we'll see. And she came back and she said, I put raw eggs in this, and I put protein supplement in it, and I made it with, like, the best ice cream in Cincinnati, and, like, real cream and stuff like this. This huge milkshake. And I said, Lisa, just the smell of it makes me nauseous. Get it out of my room. And she said, listen, I made this out of love, and you're going to get well now. And she stood there for over an hour while I sipped on that stupid thing and drank the whole thing. Now, she probably could have gotten fired from the hospital for doing this. But, I mean, she was absolutely inspired by God to do this, because there's no reason in the world why she would have done that for me, you know. And from that day on, I just started getting better.
And while you were laying in that hospital room, you also kept hearing a patient in another room wailing.
Oh, yeah.
That was a beautiful experience as well.
So sad. A man across the hall, whose name was Clarence, had extreme Alzheimer's, and all he did was make sounds like a wild animal, really loud though. He was also a biter, and every time a nurse, I'd see a nurse or something go into his room, a few minutes later, ah, you know, like, Clarence, don't bite me, you know. He couldn't make any rational sounds, and his wife stayed in the room with him. And she was a sweet woman. I felt so sorry for her and for Clarence. And one night, he was driving me crazy. He would wake me up in the middle of the night with his howling and his screaming, and nobody could calm him down. And it was like a wild animal. And it's like, man, I'm sick. I'm trying to get well, and this guy's like making me sicker, you know, with his noise. And so I said to God, I said, what is this about? Why do I have to be, you know, in a hospital with this, like, crazy man, you know? And I was shown that what he was doing, Clarence was still Clarence, way deep down inside that diseased body. And he was just, Clarence was basically yelling, I'm still alive, I'm still here, I'm still me.
But he wasn't able to express it.
So it's just coming out in all these strange, contorted ways.
And then what did you do?
I started to pray for him, you know? And I thought that he and I became buddies after that, although I never saw him.
Didn't you yell out something, or Clarence, I know you're there, and it calmed him when he did that?
I yelled to him, and I said, Clarence, I'm hearing you now. I finally understand what you're saying.
And that calmed him?
Yep.
Somebody heard him?
Yep.
His cries?
Nobody else heard him. Well, you couldn't hear him because it was just noise.
Yeah, eventually you were released from that hospital. And I have to also point out, there was no evidence on paper that you received that said you actually had died in that Paris hospital. Because did you ever ask for it, or they didn't know?
Oh yeah, We had the American consulate, we had a U.S. senator, we had all kinds of people trying to get my medical records, and they would never send my medical records.
Oh, so you've never even gotten the records?
And I think I know why.
Because of what they didn't do.
Yeah.
You're right. The lawsuits. You get out of the hospital, and eventually you recuperate, and you're back at the university?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you deal with that? You're back in this environment where you were in before, a very heady intellectual environment with your friends around, all non-believers, I assume.
Well, I wanted to show them Christian love, and they asked me to be the department chair. And so I became an administrator. And I did my best to take care of their needs and to love them and to get them the best raises I could possibly get and get them the equipment and the facilities and the materials that they were all hollering for. But they were not interested in my message, and in fact, some of the administrators over me told me to never, ever mention my experience or God or heaven or Jesus or anything, ever,
They thought
ever.
you were loony. They thought you were making it up?
They despised it. They hated it.
You made them angry.
Yeah, I mean, I had people say to me, sidle up to me and says, you know, you don't really believe all that crap you've been saying. You know, you don't believe that, do you? You know, like, well, yeah. I mean, people, they don't want to accept it because if they were to accept it, then it would challenge the whole structure of their thinking. You know? So I felt more and more alienated from my colleagues, unfortunately, because it would seem, and I was also becoming more and more fascinated by the church, which the university is supposed to be a haven of light, but it was really the church that was the haven of light.
And which church at this point?
Well, I prayed, when I was recuperating from my illness, I prayed a lot to God, where would I go? And ultimately, I was talking to an artist on the telephone. I was not ambulatory. And she said, well, I go to this church down the street, and I asked my wife, and it turned out it was what I had been raised in, and it was only a mile away. And so I went there, and I saw it full of the angels and full of funky people trying to be better people, and I said, boy, this is for me.
And you had a Catholic nun, a friend, a student, who had prayed you into this. You never considered Catholicism. You went back to something that you were familiar with, or you felt called back to?
I did consider Catholicism. I went on, actually I went on several retreats with the Jesuits, and they said, basically to me, you're doing fine where you are, why don't you just stay where you are? I did look at Catholicism and consulted priests, and they didn't discourage me. They said, but
Follow where God's taking you?
yeah, you're being very active in the church that you're in, doing the right thing. Why would you leave that and come do this? And I couldn't really explain that. I didn't feel called to do that.
So over the next 7 years, by 7 years later, you're a Protestant minister. You have a master's in divinity, and you decide to chuck all the university life and.
Yeah, that was hard because I'd worked so hard to become a tenured professor, and finally, as a tenured professor and as a chair, was in the gravy.
Sure.
It takes a while, but you know, I was doing real well. You know,
and your wife's an attorney. How did she feel about that?
Well, she thought I was absolutely out of my mind.
Yeah.
You know, she was saying, look, if you want to be like a minister, you can go get a church and do it on the weekend and keep your job. You know, nobody's stopping you. You can play minister if you want. And I said, no, I want my whole life to be about the church, about God's people. And she said, well, you're doing ministry at the university. And I said, yeah, I know, but I can't talk about Jesus, I can't talk about God. I mean, that's not what I had in mind. I want to give my life to the church. So I went to seminary for 3 years and became ordained, and I've been at this church for 9.5 years.
Right.
Yeah.